My name is Judy. I first moved to Mexico in March of 2018, and we moved to Puerto Morelos at that time. I wanted to move to Mexico since I was 16 years old because I lived in Mexico City as a foreign exchange student, and I fell in love with the country and the people. And so my goal had always been that once I retired, I would move to Mexico either part-time or full-time. And in 2017, I started looking for homes, and we came down and found our house in Puerto Morelos. Interestingly enough, Puerto Morelos was not my first choice. My husband and daughter, who moved with me to Mexico, both wanted to live on the Caribbean side. They wanted to be near the beach. I didn't care about the beach at all. But we had looked at Playa, we had looked at Cancun, we had looked at a couple of different places, and a friend mentioned to me, had I ever seen Puerto on the way to Playa? And I said no, so I booked a trip for my husband and I to come down and check out Puerto, and I actually fell in love with it because it was a small town, and I was used to living in a big city, and I thought it would be a nice change of pace. And it was right on the beach. And so then that's where we started our house hunting, was in Puerto at that point. The amount of growth that I saw, because like I said, I was a teenager when I was in Mexico City until the time I retired to come down here. The amount of growth, the explosion of the towns and the cities, and that was actually a little overwhelming at first. Which is why Puerto, I thought, was going to be a good place for us, because we could start out slow and small. And we still had access to Cancun, which is a pretty good sized city, and Playa, which is a pretty, it's not big, but it's a little more metropolitan than Puerto Morelos, obviously. In Puerto Morelos, life was pretty slow and casual. Because of the beach, there was a lot of beach bars. So people spent a lot of their day at the beach bars and on the beach. Pickleball, volleyball, horseshoes, whatever. And that wasn't a lifestyle that I was accustomed to or desired. So I didn't spend it, since that was the thing to do and I didn't do it, it really wasn't a good fit for me. I started looking into a drier climate. My daughter has a respiratory illness that was an issue for her because of all the mold from the humidity that is in the Riviera Maya. So I started looking. Initially, I looked at San Miguel because I thought it was a drier climate and that it sounded like a cool place, and I had never been there. So she and I did an exploration of San Miguel, but we found that because of the altitude, because of the way the streets all are on a steep incline, that it wasn't going to be a great place for my husband to be able to walk around. So after we left there, I went home and I started looking at nearby places because it was the climate that I was interested in. And I discovered Querétaro and started doing some research and found that although it wasn't a city as big as Chicago, where I'm from, it was a pretty good sized city compared to Puerto Morelos and Cancun. And so then we did an exploratory trip to check out Querétaro. And we figured out very quickly that this was where we wanted to be. Well, we made multiple trips before we made a decision for sure. We wanted to come at the different times of the year. And so we came in November, and we came in January and February, April and May, which wasn't all of the seasons, but it gave us an idea if we were going to be able to adapt to the cold. I mean, we lived in Chicago, so we were used to brutal cold, but having spent over 5 years in Riviera Maya, where it was hot all the time, we weren't sure how we'd adjust. And we discovered in November that it was pretty cold in Querétaro, but it was cold inside. once the day started and you went outside, it was perfect weather. So, and then, like I said, we came back in January. My daughter ended up deciding to move here immediately because her lease was up at the end of January. So we came back to find her a place to live. And then I brought my husband here I came in February with my daughter to move her here. And then I brought my husband here in April, and we spent a week of that time taking him around, letting him see if he would like it and how he felt about it. And he was like, yeah, I think this is a good place for us. And I found a place for us to live in May of last year. And then we moved here in June. So the process to move to Querétaro from Puerto Morelos, we moved to an unfurnished home. So we left most of our furniture behind in the house that we had in Puerto. And we came here, we didn't even have beds. We had TVs and a couch, pretty much. So we arranged to move household goods and, like I said, some furniture. And I hired a service. So they brought our household goods that we were bringing with us. And then we had to come here and we had to buy bedroom furniture. We had to buy dining room furniture. We had to buy dressers and tables and all of that stuff, which wasn't hard. And it wasn't horribly expensive. I didn't go to all the high-end stores. I didn't spend a lot of money on furniture because I didn't know how long we were going to stay. But it was a big move across country. It took us 3 days of driving with our dogs in our car. And my husband has a motorcycle, so we had to have the motorcycle moved on the moving truck with our belongings. And we stayed on the road, like I said, for 3 days. We had to stay at a couple of different places until we arrived here. And then at that point, my daughter was already living here. So we came to stay with her until we could get the movers to bring our furniture and get us established. Actually, I was pretty amazed at how quickly everybody was delivering things. The longest we waited for furniture was our dining room set, I think took 6 or 8 weeks to come. But that was basically it. It was pretty smooth. We were pretty lucky. The movers showed up on time. The house was ready. And with the help of Mexico Relocation Guide, they got us set up with the CFE. They got us set up with Telmex Internet. They got us set up for gas delivery. Speaking of the gas, though, the one thing we noticed is CFE is so much less here in Querétaro, but the gas, way more. I would pay 600 pesos and have a full cylinder of gas for close to 6 months. Here, I go through, I have to have the gas truck come every 45 days, maybe 2 months, and it's more than double what I paid in Puerto Morelos, which I don't understand why, but it's just the way it is, I guess, here. I know there's been a lot of talk about the cost of living and people saying that Querétaro is very expensive, but both from my point of view, having lived in Chicago and having lived in the Riviera Maya, I don't find Querétaro that expensive. I don't think it's definitely not as expensive as living in either Chicago or Puerto Morelos. I think that prices here, obviously between COVID and inflation and things like that, prices have gone up, but I still don't think it's that expensive to live here. In Puerto Morelos, a house like this would probably cost $2,500 US dollars. Here, I'm paying up until just this month when I had my lease renewed, we were paying 17,000 pesos, so basically 1,000 US dollars a month, and they raised it. We're now paying 18,500 pesos. But for a house this size, with the amenities that we have here and the fact that we have security and a park right across the street, and we are absolutely surrounded by every imaginable business and service that we could need, you couldn't get anything like that in Puerto or Chicago, for sure, not at this price. Also here, the CFE is not expensive at all compared to living in Puerto Morelos or Chicago. My most expensive CFE bill here has been, I'm going to say 600 pesos, so $35 US a month. I'm sorry, for 2 months. And water is a monthly bill that we pay here, and that's been right around 500 pesos. So let's say $25 to $30 a month. Gas is the most expensive here. We have a truck that delivers our gas, and that has been running. When we first moved here, it was about 1,100 pesos, so $55 US. And now it's getting closer to 1,600 pesos, so more like 80, 85 US. But again, that's generally a 2-month supply, so I don't think that's that bad. And then our drinking water, we have, usually they deliver garrafones here. I don't think I spend maybe 200 pesos a month for our drinking water, and we drink a lot of water. So, but yeah, I don't think it's expensive to live here at all. I think it's very, very much better than where I was living in Puerto Morelos, or like I said, back in Chicago for sure. Groceries, because we don't eat out very often, we both are trying to eat more healthy, especially as we've gotten older. So most of our meals we take at home. And so our grocery bill is a little higher. I actually keep a spreadsheet of everything I spend anything on. Unfortunately, I lumped wine with groceries and dog food with groceries. So I'm going to say that we probably spend between 600 and 700 US dollars a month on that. But like I said, I've lumped in anything the dogs eat, anything we eat, wine. And we like to eat a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. So there's a lot of consumption of that. And like I was saying earlier, we have big breakfast burritos every morning, or we have bacon, or not bacon, sausage and eggs. And, we're not eating as much meat here for 2 reasons, because we don't think that it's as healthy for us as when we were younger. But also, I don't care for the beef here. It's not what I'm accustomed to. But my husband still likes, he'll go to Costco and he'll buy 6 pounds of ground beef so that he can make hamburgers or some kind of chili or, something with that. We do eat pork. We eat a lot of chicken. If we're going to eat poultry, we eat chicken. Once in a while, he'll buy a big ham and we'll have ham. But again, the groceries were a lot more expensive for us in both Puerto and Chicago. In Puerto, we ate out probably a lot more frequently because we had a lot of friends that we would meet up with, and that there was so many different restaurants, different ethnic options. That's the one thing that's been a disappointment for me in Querétaro. I'm not so impressed with the restaurant options. We found a few good ones. We found a place in I would say it's El Centro, called Panico. They have really good pizza. And we found a restaurant also in Juriquilla, Humos, that has amazing sandwiches and like a Reuben, like you could get back in the States if you want, if that's what you wanted. I would have to say living in Querétaro without knowing Spanish is more difficult than living in an area where there's a lot of tourists or snowbirds, because obviously the people, the restaurants, the hotels, the stores, there's going to be a lot more people who speak English in places like that. So it's been more challenging in Querétaro, but there's always Google Translate. And I was told initially that I wouldn't find hardly any English speakers in Querétaro. And that's actually not been the case. Especially at the park, I meet English speakers all the time. Not so much in the stores. Most of the people in like the mercados and even places like Liverpool, places like that, there's not a lot of English speaking. So you do need to have your Spanish. Even though I've been studying a minimum of an hour and a half to 2 hours every day for the last 6 years, I don't think my Spanish is that great. People say I do okay. They say they understand me, but a lot of times I get tripped up. I can read it better than I can speak it. But like I said, Google Translate. And if you make an effort, people seem to want to help you. And if they know any English at all, they'll actually try to help you or put in a word or whatever. We have a lot of mixed language conversations. Like when we run into people at the park who want to talk to the dogs or they have a question about us or whatever, they'll start out everything in Spanish. But if I get to the point where I tell them that I don't understand, they'll try very hard to speak in English. So it's kind of a give and take. But I'm here in Mexico. I need to be able to speak the language here. I need to make more of an effort. When I first started relearning Spanish 6 years ago, I started it on like Duolingo. And I still do Duolingo every day because that kind of challenges me a little bit to learn new words, new vocabulary. But it's not really the best way to learn Spanish, obviously. And with Duolingo, they don't always teach you what's really going on in Mexico. There's phrases that I learned that I thought, I was doing really well. And then I started taking Spanish classes and they're like, yeah, they don't say that here. I don't know where they say it, but they don't say it here. So I don't know if it's like Spain Spanish or if it's just some other part of the country. But yeah, I would think I was doing really well. Healthcare here in all over Mexico so far where we've been has been pretty amazing. We've had a couple of minor emergencies, minor illnesses or whatever, if you will. My husband actually had a very bad fall, split his, like right above his eyebrow, should have had stitches. But I wasn't home and I was spending the night with my daughter. And so he decided he was going to wait till he saw me. Well, when we took him to the emergency room, they were like, we can't stitch that, but they cleaned it up. They did x-rays to see if he had a concussion or, whatever. They used what we call butterfly sutures to put it all back together. They gave him antibiotics. I think they gave him a shot. And I want to say the whole visit with the x-rays, with everything, did not even cost $100. My husband also has an issue with his knee, and we were treated in Cancun at a hospital there by an orthopedic doctor. And they did these injections. They took, I can't even explain the process, but they did these injections into his knee. And in the United States, these particular injections would have cost thousands of dollars. There would have been a fee for the doctor. There would have been a fee for the I think we spent $300 per treatment, and he had 2 treatments. So that was nothing. Recently, I had been traveling and I came home and I was very, very sick with an upper respiratory infection. Very sick. I had no voice for 14 days. I could barely breathe. I was sneezing and coughing, and all I wanted to do was sleep. And we had a doctor that came to the house, which was amazing. Came to the house, gave me a shot, made a couple prescriptions that my husband went and picked up. And I don't think the entire process was 1,000 pesos for the prescriptions, and the doctor's visit was 600. So the rest of it, I don't even think it was 300 pesos for the prescriptions. It was absolutely amazing. And I didn't have to go anywhere. It was amazing. And Same thing with dental care here. I mean, my daughter has had her teeth cleaned multiple times. That was in Puerto, though. That wasn't here in Querétaro. But again, I don't think she paid $100 to have her teeth cleaned. And like I said, none of this is with insurance. We haven't needed it at this point. So we haven't invested in it. Since living in Mexico, I would have to say that I have been able to slow down. Back in the States, before I retired, I worked between 12 and 14 hours every day. I was an HR manager for an IT company. When I started there, we had 35 employees, and when I left there, we had 375 employees. So my days were long. They were very stressful. My background was in business management and accounting, and they needed somebody to be an HR person. And they said, go to school, get a certificate. So I was even doing something that I didn't feel I was qualified for. So that kind of made the stress level greater. And it had health risks because of it, obviously. The pace was crazy. Like I said, 12, 14-hour days, you came home and you were lucky if you ate dinner and got to go to bed. I didn't even get to work out that regularly there. Here, I get to walk a lot. My husband rides a bike a lot. He goes to the gym. I have a gym in the house here that I work out myself. The pace is slower. I have more time. Obviously, I'm not working, so I don't have that stress. When you go out, that's another thing. Maybe in Puerto, it wasn't as bad as it was back in the United States, but here, everyone greets you. Everywhere you go, somebody says hello to you. Buen dia, buenas tardes, buenos no. It's always. In Chicago, you were invisible. You could say hello to people and they'd look at you like you were crazy. And Chicago is one of the friendliest cities in the United States. Midwesterners are known for their friendliness, but it doesn't compare to the friendliness that I found in Mexico. That takes a little getting used to too, because when you're used to that hectic, frenetic pace, when you have to shop, when you have to get your gasoline, when you have to do this and you have to do that, and then you come to Mexico and things have slowed down, and where you go to shop, the people that you are engaging with in the markets or at the car dealership, or everybody is at a slower pace. You have to get used to that, and you have to embrace it, because if you don't, they're not speeding up for you. They're not in any hurry. They're going to do what they do. That's their lifestyle, and that I appreciate. I like the slower pace. I like the fact that you don't just start immediately talking to somebody. They want to know, how are you? The small talk happens a little bit before you get to what it is you need or want. And it's pretty nice. I'm very happy here. Besides the climate, I like the people here a lot more. I feel like we're more in Mexico here than we were in Puerto Morelos or Playa or Cancun, because there's nothing wrong with those places, but they're very full of tourists and snowbirds. And so you don't have to speak Spanish. You don't have to immerse yourself in the culture. And I wanted more of that. So I'm just much happier here. The climate is the bonus, obviously. But I like it here better. And I like the big city aspect. I guess I was wrong about making a move to a small town. I am more of a city girl, even though this isn't considered a big city, I guess, in Mexico, but it's a big city after being in Puerto. I think an important thing for people moving to Mexico and wanting to integrate into their new communities is to quit comparing what you had from where you came from to what you have now. There is no comparison. It's a totally different culture. It's a totally different lifestyle. And if you wanted what you had back home, then you should have stayed back home. I think you have to embrace the Mexican people and the way they do things and appreciate that it's a better lifestyle. I think a lot of people come here and they're disrespectful because they're not embracing this this totally different culture and this totally different lifestyle. They're not appreciating it, and they're not respecting Mexican people and the way they do things. And you don't belong here if that's the case. You really don't belong here. And then, I mean, I'm not going to say it's easy. There are days that it's hard. I had a friend in Puerto who had a saying that I can't do Mexico today because whatever it was didn't make sense, or it was a harder process or whatever. And I kind of adopted that. And there were days I would just be like, nope, can't do Mexico today. I'm just going to stay home and read a book or watch a movie and stop. I think a thing that people don't remember, they say, well, I live here, or I bought a home here, or, you know, I'm a resident, I'm a permanent resident, or I'm a temporary resident. You're still a guest in this country. And you don't have a right to inflict what you learned or what you did back where you came from on the people here. Give it up, let it go. And if you can't, then this isn't the place for you. I think that anybody who's considering a move to Mexico really needs to do a deep dive research. Mexico Relocation Guide, although I did not myself use it, I found it after I lived here, I think is an amazing, amazing, what's the word I'm looking for? Resource, I guess is the best word, because they're going to help you find the people and the places that are right for you. They're going to help you learn about the culture. They're going to help you learn about what's important, places to live where you can and have to speak Spanish, places where you can live because it's the right climate for what you're looking for. People come here. I made the mistake coming here. I thought, oh, I wanted to live in a warmer climate. And then I lived in 85% humidity at 95 degrees Fahrenheit for 5 years. And I was like, yep, nope, that was a mistake. And we bought a home. Rent first. Rent in different places. Stay a minimum of 6 months, if not a year, so that you're living through all the different weather. So that you know what the neighborhood is like. If you don't like noise, if you don't like barking dogs, you don't want to buy a house or have a year rent or lease in a place where there's lots of noise and a lot of dogs. You'll be miserable. We are probably going to be selling our home in Puerto Morelos. And for now, I love Querétaro. I'm hearing different places I might want to explore, but I'm definitely going to just rent for a while longer until I decide on the final place that I want to be. And like I said, research, research, research. Things here are different. It's harder to open a bank account. It's harder to get health insurance or find a doctor or whatever. And resources like Mexico Relocation Guide have all of that. Mariana Lang has set it up. It's like a manual for living. Find a company that will take you on neighborhood tours, that will show you what a neighborhood is like. What are the stores and services and businesses that you're going to need? Do you not want to have a car? Do you need a car? I mean, those are all important factors, and you need help. And if you don't speak the language in particular, you definitely need help. And so research, research, research. I can't say that enough. I would like to express my gratitude for the opportunity to share my experiences, and I hope that my experiences help other people in their journey. Like I said, I'm not going to pretend that there aren't problems in moving to a foreign country, especially in a foreign country you don't know the language. But if you have done your research and you have the resources and you meet the people and you open your heart and your mind, I think that you will find that it's a wonderful experience that you can't pass up.